Welcome to Technado.
Welcome back to another episode of Technado. This podcast is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. So if you're listening from the Technado website, look for that sponsored by button, click on that to go to the IT Pro website. And if you want to support the podcast, check out those courses. You can use the promo code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership. I'm your host for the show, Sophie Goodwin. I'm looking forward to getting into some of the news we've got this week. If you've been following along with some of our other episodes, we're going to return to some more Microsoft news, and it's going to be a fun time. But with me, of course, is Don Pizzette. Don, how are you today?
I am doing great. It's it's an exciting time to be alive. There's so
you
much.
live in interesting times.
Yeah. There's so much going on out there. We've got some follow-up news that we want to touch on this week, which is good. But just a lot of exciting stuff going on. So it's a good episode, I'm sure.
Oh, it's going to be great. Yeah, we're setting the bar high already, and Daniel's here. So hi, Daniel.
Hello. You ever have like something stuck in your head randomly? I have that scene from The Burbs where Art and Ray are in the basement. They're looking at their like Necronomicon or whatever it was, and he's chanting. For whatever reason, that scene is stuck in my head.
You're telling me this like I know what you're talking about.
So the Burbs, it's a great movie if you ever see it, but because the name of the movie starts with an apostrophe, it's the first thing in my Plex library.
Yep.
And so I've watched that movie more than I should just because of that.
Nah, you should watch it that much. It's a good flick.
It is a good
I'll do more research on that after the show, and also on Plex.
And then not watch it.
I don't have one of those either. So yeah, eventually I'll add it to the list.
Sure.
My mom did say if next time I go home, my dad would love to watch some of these movies with me, which makes sense.
Well, it's
He's right around your...
because every episode you point out his failures as a father.
He's right around you guys' age. It would make sense that he's into these
Sir,
movies.
you had one job, okay? I'm just going to leave it there.
Dad.
I'm just gonna leave it
If
there.
you're watching.
Yeah.
We'll move on. We'll stop we'll stop berating my poor father. We'll go into our first article. This comes to us from Tom's Hardware. GDDR7 arrives. Samsung outs the world's first chip, 32 gigatransfers a second for next-gen CPUs. Did I say that right?
You did, yeah.
GPUs. I was so close.
You said that wrong.
I said that wrong.
You threw a question mark on it like the spec was in doubt. And I was like, oh, I think they're legit.
I doubted it, yeah.
Have they verified this, or is this fake news, Don?
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So technology kind of felt like it was advancing slowly. The supply chain issues that were going on made it where new technology was being created, but not to mass market. Like you can go to the store and buy a lot of the cool things you were hearing about. Memory is one area that was set back by two things. There was the supply chain, and there were a couple of, like the one factory fire that destroyed...
And laziness.
And laziness. I'm sure that factors into to blame the youngins.
Pure sloth, Don. They just couldn't get off their derrieres and make those chips.
Well, there have been some advancements, and we are starting to see some of those come to market. And the one today is from Samsung, and it's GDDR7. Now, if you go and buy a desktop or laptop today, the odds are it has like DDR4 in it. But in graphics cards, where they need as fast of memory as possible, it's common they have DDR5, DDR6, or GDDR6 is out, and you can buy it. It's just incredibly expensive. But GDDR7 is now rolled out, and 32 giga transfers per second. That means like 32 billion transactions or communications are happening per second. That's a ridiculous number. And then the sheer amount of bandwidth that it can move, where is that? That's in here somewhere. It bumps up to somewhere around 128 gigabytes per second data transfer, which is crazy fast. Most people have skipped GDDR6. This is like a 50% speed improvement over that. So when you combine it, like if you go from 5 to 7, it's a pretty big leap.
That's a big jump, Don. 50%. Heck.
Yeah.
By Grapthar's hammer.
What a savings.
What a savings. And the confused look on Sophia's face is back. The fourth member of the of Technado is Sophia's confused look.
Oh, I see. It gets its own
I've
personality.
anthropomorphized it, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
So I thought it was the first part of this article is said in quite an unexpected twist, and I thought that was funny. Was this like an unexpected development?
Well, so there was a little bit of controversy, which is there's a technology called PAM3, and I cannot for the life of me remember what PAM stands for. It's not the authentication.
Not pluggable access module.
No, it is not that one. But it deals with the state of data. Normally when you deal with memory, every single bit that's stored in there is either a 1 or a 0, right? But in PAM3 memory, you can do a -1, a 0, or a 1. Don't confuse this with like quantum computing, where there's that nebulous state where something can be a 0 and a 1 at the same time. It's not like that. But it's 3 states for every bit. And that makes this more efficient, right? You know, you have basically a whole extra bit that you can squirrel away in there. And it's not perfect. It's got some problems. And so people didn't expect it to come to market so soon, but here it is. So apparently Samsung decided that it was stable enough to be used for a graphics adapter, which it's funny to call them graphics adapters today because people use them for all sorts of things other than that. Like the whole AI revolution is driven by graphics cards.
So interesting. And maybe you know this because it just popped in my head because I don't know. What is their major marketing push? Is it through, hey, you get better graphics with a better graphics card? Or is it increase your bit mining capabilities or all this, asymmetric fun stuff that you can do with computers nowadays?
Samsung doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because they don't
they've got to have
cards.
They got to have some focus on their marketing campaigns, though, right?
They make this memory, and they're not trying to sell it to you and me. They're trying to sell it to NVIDIA.
Gotcha.
They're trying to sell it to ATI, AMD. They're trying to sell it to the people that make those other devices, and then they purchase Samsung memory and use it in their devices.
Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting to know.
It does say they expect artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and automotive applications to take advantage of GDDR7. So I guess maybe that's the push or the focus?
Yeah, I think everything will gravitate to it eventually. It's fast.
What's that going to do for these companies that adopt this stuff? I mean, are they going to drive prices up? Is it going to bring prices down? Or what are we going to see advantage-wise out of this, Don?
In the beginning, it'll drive prices up. If you've bought a NVIDIA card, if you go and buy one right now, a 4090, an RTX 4090 is, I think they're like $2,800 for a video card. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a bit of money there, Don.
And then you go to like a 4080, and it gets a little more reasonable. They're like
$2,700.
But even the low-end cards are $400 or $500 right now. That's a lot.
Dang, man, that's crazy.
Think back in the day where the high-end cards were 200, 300 maybe.
Yeah.
For the high end.
Yeah.
So that whole market's changed, and that's where this will come first. And then, like any technology, over the years, it'll get cheaper and cheaper to produce and spread out other places.
But then it'll be obsolete at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be GDDR8, 9, and so on.
GDDR 9,000.
I like that we have such a sunny outlook and disposition on this show.
Oh, yeah.
It'll get there eventually,
not
and then it'll be
cynical at all.
obsolete.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I love it when it becomes obsolete because then I can go buy it.
Yeah?
I can act. The everyman can get out there.
That is a weirdly
and
optimistic
purchase
take
these
for you.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So oddly, I get weird, people reach out to me and say, what would be good for a hacking workstation, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, a Chromebook? Do you have a terminal? Unless you're doing like some crazy password attacks or whatever. You just need a browser and something that can run like Burp Suite and like a command line tool and a good internet connection. You're pretty good to go.
I've talked to people like that where you can tell whether they're thinking in their mind is, I want to be able to install Kali Linux directly on this hardware and have all the hardware supported and be able to do MAC address spoofing and so on. And it's like, well, you don't really need to do all that stuff, or you can do it in a VM. And
right.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
I was wondering if that's where we were at with this.
No, we'll see this trickle out into hardware over the years, and it'll be impressive. Sometimes like a new version of a product comes out. We'll use Intel as an example, right? So you might have a 10th generation i7, and then the 11th generation comes out.
Do you mean every time I buy a computer?
Yeah. Well, that's how most people upgrade. They buy a new computer. They don't think about, this Intel processor is getting a little slow. Time to get a new one, because they don't know the difference between the 10th and the 11th generation.
No, I specifically go, what's the latest thing out? Oh, it's 10th gen. Cool, I'm going to go buy that. And then like a week later, they're like, introducing our 11th gen processor.
Yeah.
I am going to stab you.
Yeah. They're on a 1-year cycle, so likely to happen.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes, technology.
Yeah.
You're just a little behind the times.
I hate it. I'm a Luddite now. Giving it all up. Burn this thing, Don.
We're going to find Daniel in a cabin in the mountains.
A big grizzly Adams beer. What do you do to my property?
Writing his manifesto.
Yeah. The machines are the devil.
As if I didn't.
Hold on, I hear an airplane. Get my gun. It's at 30,000 feet, Daniel. I'm going to get him.
before Daniel incriminates himself, we'll go ahead and move on to our next article. This comes to us from Slashdot. Microsoft to offer some free security products after criticism. So we did talk a little bit about this last week, I think, right?
Yeah, this is a bit of a deja news, I guess, where last week we talked about a security incident going on at Microsoft where hackers were able to get a signing key and forge credentials and gain access to some really sensitive Microsoft 365 accounts in their email in particular. Well, one of the comments that I made in the podcast last week was that Microsoft is getting a little bit of criticism because the logs that allowed the customers to detect that they had been hacked were only available if you had an E5 license. And Daniel and I had a conversation about what that cost to have an E5 versus an E3 and so on.
Plus what get covered, and there's big differences between the E5 and E3s. And
which, we I'll do a shout out to one of our viewers, a former podcast guest here on Technado wrote in to let me know, and he said I didn't have to mention him by name, but he reached out to let me know that we were talking about how the pricing was licensed, and it is per user. Yep. So E3 is per user, E5 is per user, and if you had to be like an E5 to have these logs in place to be able to troubleshoot it. Well, Microsoft did get a little bad press over that, and so they did announce that they are changing those particular logs that were referenced last week. Those are now available to E3s, and I think they're actually making them available free to any customer level. So they're opening that one up. But our previous guest who wrote in let me know that it will be a good chance to remind people that there are a lot of really cool security features in Microsoft 365 that just aren't turned on by default or that people don't know about. And he gave an example about the phishing simulation. And we actually use that at our day job where we send fake phishing emails to our employees just to see who clicks on it and figure out who needs more training. That's built into your Office 360 or Microsoft 365 account, but it's not on by default. You have to actively go and use that tool. There's a ton of features like that Microsoft can't turn on by default because it might break something that you need. So it's up to you as the customer to, one, know it's there, and then two, turn it on and configure it. And that's kind of how these logs are. Like Microsoft's now made them available, but if you're not checking these logs, if you're not actively looking, they're not going to do you any good, right? So there's still, they call it shared responsibility. When you use a cloud service, you can't rely on the cloud provider to do everything. You still have a responsibility to maintain that. So, I can kind of see both sides on it, but it is frustrating because we would think that I said this last week, so I'm repeating myself, but you'd think an organization like Microsoft that had the best employees possible on the job would be able to take care of a lot of this stuff. And they do. They take care of a lot of things, but sometimes it slips through the cracks.
Especially when these big things happen, like, I don't know, Chinese spies getting a hold of signing keys.
Oops.
Seems like one of those big things.
Yeah.
And once that became aware, you would think that and maybe that did happen. I'm thinking in my head this conversation. Maybe they did at that point make those logs available after they realized, the only place you can get that is from those logs. Like, did the person from Microsoft explain whether or not that was when that became in effect?
He didn't say that.
Okay.
But the logs that we're talking about are called Microsoft Purview, Purview. And Microsoft's official announcement says that they will be opened up to customers in the coming months.
Oh.
So
still not now.
Not now, not that I'm aware of at least, but shortly.
Shortly could mean in a few weeks.
Surely,
it could mean 2024. Who knows?
In the coming months. Technically, every month is coming.
Yes. Every single one of them is on their way here.
Except for the ones that have already been here.
Those are gone. Yeah.
Those are gone.
But in the coming months.
That's true. Well, yeah, like you said, it does say all customers though in the coming months. So it's not like it's just certain tiers. It's not like, well, we'll just allow, one or two more tiers to access this. It'll be available to everybody. It's just we don't know.
And maybe that just goes to show you how big a Leviathan Microsoft is, and it takes a while to make changes to a machine as large as that.
Yeah. Good for them though for listening to people's feedback and taking some action on it.
In the coming months.
Eventually. We'll get there eventually.
Where's the fire, Don?
I guess that is good news, though. It's nice to have some good news here. But moving on, we've got another article, and this one's going to be part of a segment called Deja News.
Deja News.
Now, this might have been something that you guys talked about before I was on the show.
A long time ago.
This comes to us from TechCrunch. It says U.S. government launches the Cyber Trust Mark, its long-awaited IoT security labeling program. So I guess if this is deja vu, so this has been in the works for a while.
It absolutely has. Yep. It feels like forever ago. We talked about this when the U.S. government, let's clarify, set forth with an initiative saying they wanted to stick a label on IoT devices. And we have reported on IoT devices for a long time because they typically have very, very poor security. So the government announced what they were going to try and do was come up with a labeling program. Much like when you buy food products here in the U.S., you can look at the label and see how many calories they have, what is a serving size, what vitamins and nutrients they do or do not have, and more importantly, how many trans fats are in there so you know if it tastes good or not.
That's right. Is it gluten-free?
That's right. So we have food labeling like that. They said, well, why don't we come up with an IoT label? A lot of challenges to that.
It's
right?
hard to like figure out how many trans fats are in an IoT device.
There is, yep.
Yeah, really
but how do you quantify security? You can't like put on the sticker like how many 0 days are present in this device.
Yeah. That's not how 0 days work. I need a number, sir.
What's the percent daily value of 0 days in this product?
Listen, we are the United States government, and this is how it works.
So NIST, the National Institute of Standards and
Blah,
Technology,
blah, blah.
Yeah. NIST, which is actually a great organization. They put out a lot of free standards that you can use and save some time with. But NIST put out a series of guidelines for IoT security, and they have basically used these guidelines to establish what is going to be called Trust Mark, this label that can be found on the IoT devices, or it's the Cyber Trust Mark. Now, I was curious what this label was going to look like, so they finally came out and made the announcement. They said, this is it. We're launching. Here it is. You know what the label looks like?
Energy Star compliant.
It looks like a QR code.
Does it really?
And at first, yeah.
Is it a QR code?
It's a QR code.
It is a QR code.
It is.
It doesn't look like a QR code.
Well, yeah,
it is
like
a QR code.
So it is a QR code. Sorry, I will retract my prior statement.
Senator Pizzette, when you said it looks like a QR code, I don't know why I became a Southern gentleman. For some
Colonel
reason,
Sanders on the other side of the
all
table.
of my lawyers and whatnot are.
I know it looks like murder,
Yeah.
but
I'm here to tell you, not murder.
So when I first heard about this, I thought, well, wait a minute, that's a good idea, right? So you can scan this QR code, and it will take you not to the vendor's webpage. It will take you to a NIST registered page, one managed by the government, where it identifies, here's the steps you need to take to secure the device. If you need to update firmware, here's where you go to get it. Here's the most recent patches for the device. And if a vendor wants to participate in this program, because it's totally optional, if a vendor wants to participate in this program, they have to register with the government to be able to have one of these pages on their device. And I thought, all right, well, that's a good way to go about it, right? The vendor has to be committed.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm at the store and I'm looking at two wireless access points and one has a Cyber Trust Mark code on it and one doesn't, I would, if I didn't know the brands, I would probably lean towards the one that had the code, right?
This ain't like one of those Tommy Boy kind of scenarios where if you want me to take a dump in a box and label it guaranteed, I've got the time. But at the end of the day, all you have is a guaranteed piece of crap. My world is movies. You know that, right? Like,
I always want to quote Tommy Boy with the, if I want an opinion on a steak, I could.
Cut a bull's horns off or something like that.
Like get the butcher to stick his head up a bull's butt or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember the quote,
That's
though.
right.
It's too complex for me. But in this case, I started thinking about it more. And I was like, wait a minute. How can we totally subvert this program, right? What's the problem with QR codes?
Is you can't tell what they do until you scan it.
As a human, you have no idea what it is until you scan it. So
you just put a QR code on your box,
or
on the device, whatever the hell it is. Yeah.
What's to say, like, you and me create some kind of prank, funny page, order a whole thing of sticker sheets, go down to Best Buy and just walk down the aisle putting our stickers over.
Or over the sticker. Right?
Yeah.
And then putting like bad stickers on the ones that don't have one, making you think they're good.
And then people think like, this device must be secure. Let me scan it. Oh, I just got a drive-by on my phone, and I'm now less secure.
Yes.
So I appreciate what they're trying to do, right? Create a registered web page that identifies the security credentials of the device. but I think that QR codes create their own risk.
They do.
So I don't know that this is the right solution.
I would agree with you on that. I think it's long been agreed upon that QR codes, because of the innate inability for them to kind of let you know what's happening. Now, our QR scanners kind of tell us what's happening now a lot of times, right? They say, hey, do you wish to go to this link? Yeah. This is the link. But if you're using something like a bit.ly link or whatever, you can't tell what that is anyway.
You know, Apple. Yeah. Apple is generally regarded, if I can say it, as, oh, shoot, I don't have my phone on me. I was going to test it real quick. I'm pretty certain that if I go to a QR code and I pull up the iPhone camera and look at it, it will show the QR code, and then it'll say, like, open in Edge. Mm-hmm. It doesn't tell me the URL.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I think my Android phone does.
Sophie just volunteered her phone. Oh, no, it's not true. So this one just showed Wikipedia. This one
did it do it?
Shows App Store. All right, so this
okay.
All right, this is working. I'm remembering this wrong.
Excellent.
Then. Okay.
Well, that's why we test these things.
So this is also an old phone, so maybe there's been an update.
Yeah, the update is, no, you don't need to see that. Whoa.
It's none of your business.
Calm the hell down over there.
All right, well, QR codes sure are convenient.
Yeah.
But they're easily exploitable. Yeah, we'll have to see. But kudos to them for at least trying.
Yeah.
Right? It's better than nothing. And
Amen.
What I hope to see is that IoT vendors out there willingly participate in this program.
I wonder how many of our tax dollars went into that program.
A lot. NIST is entirely tax dollar funded, right?
You're going to put yourself in a bad mood if you think too long about that.
Wow. I remember you came up with the idea of, I wish there was like a form on our tax years. Okay, so this is how much I owe. That's fine. But these are the programs I'm checking off that my tax money should go to. Yeah. And that's never going to happen.
If you can do it with your 401k,
you
should be able to do it with your tax dollars.
Yeah.
I feel like you need to do the Uncle Sam point now. Point at the camera. I found your steak quote.
Oh,
I can tell you, it's a little
Risque.
Questionable. I can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking my head up a bull's
ass.
But I'd rather take a butcher's word for it.
Yes,
there you go.
So you had the general gist, yeah.
And then later, Chris Farley ruins it and says it the wrong way.
I can stick my head up a bull's ass, but I'd much rather butcher out. Yeah,
I'd rather stick my head in the butcher or something like that. Yeah. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I have seen it.
I laughed so hard when he did the scene where about the brake pads and what happens when you go with the other guy's brake pad. I was gonna die.
I was crashing that car.
I was rolling on the floor. I could not breathe. It was so funny. That is like peak Chris Farley to me. That was like just some of his best work.
I think the dinner roll scene's a family favorite for us with his pet or whatever.
Pet,
that's a favorite.
Love it. Like,
pet it and it's great. Well, we won't go too far off topic here because we could quote movies all day long. We are going to take a quick break. That's going to wrap up our tech news segment of the show. But don't go away. We'll have more Technado coming up next. Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info. Welcome back for more Technado. We're going to be jumping into some security news in this half of the show. We'll go ahead and jump right in so that I don't give them too much of an opportunity to start talking about something else. So this article comes to us from... Okay, so this is what I'm talking about right here. This article comes to us from CNBC. It says, Google restricting internet access to some employees to reduce cyber attack risk. So when I read through this, maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. I know you will. But it kind of struck me as like almost like a least privilege kind of thing, but to the extreme. Like if you don't absolutely need internet to do your job, you don't get it, basically.
All I heard was Google's insecure.
Got bullied as a child. You can't blame it. Yeah. That's why.
You know, years ago, I was up. Where was I was at Paul Security Weekly, the podcast. Oh, yeah. I was up there for their 500th episode, and in the little round table that we did, I made a comment, and I was talking about firewall rules, right? Every company has a firewall these days, and they filter all sorts of inbound stuff. And I said, would it be such a bad thing if we had outbound firewall rules as well? Very few companies implement outbound rules. Basically, if you're an employee on the inside, you're allowed to get wherever, right? Which means if your computer gets infected or compromised, it's allowed to go wherever. And most employees don't need access to the full internet. So why not limit and restrict them? Well, it's a terribly unpopular opinion to float out there. But Google is actually looking into that now, years later. I'm sure plenty of I did not invent this. Let me clarify that
This
real
wasn't
quick.
a Don Pizzette original.
Absolutely not. At least I hope it wasn't.
I hope so, too.
So anyhow, they are looking at that, and they've rolled it out in a weird way. Like they selected 2,500 of their employees, and then they said employees could volunteer to be a part of the program. So if you're a Googler, you could actually volunteer to be part of this, where you get limited internet access.
Did you say Googler?
I think that's what they call it.
Is that what they're called?
I thought.
Googlers?
Yeah.
That is a fun term. I learn something new every day.
I could be wrong, but I thought that's what they
First
call
thing to
their
come up with
employees.
the Google
Man,
search.
if I got a job at Google and they're like, our newest Googler, I'll be like, oh, yeah, so I quit.
No. If you were new at Google, new hires are known as Nooglers. Long-term
I
employees
absolutely
are
quit.
Googlers.
I just
That's
yeah,
real.
no,
That's
I'm
a
sorry.
real thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
It'd be
I
worse.
mean to-
You could be a Microsoftie.
Are you kidding me?
No, I made that up.
Oh, thank God. Oh, man.
Anyhow, so I was thinking about it, right? In my general day, all right, I do need access to the internet because that's how I find out about tech news and other stuff. But the majority of what I do is through Microsoft 365. I'm in my email, Microsoft Teams.
That's how you access YouTube?
Can't
I
get
didn't know
Netflix
you could do that. Yeah.
But
weird.
I was thinking if I were to restrict my internet access to what I need for my job, email, Teams, Zoom, some of those things, those I need for my job, but the rest of it I really don't need. And if you were to take it away, that would secure things, right? But in a way, it's like looking at a house and saying, how can I make this house more secure? I know I'm going to get rid of all the windows. Nobody can break in if there's no windows, right? But it's a little extreme. And normally we try and find a balancing point in the middle where you're getting adequate security without inconveniencing people too much. But I wonder with this one, are we finally at that stage where the internet is just so untrustworthy that this is the only option?
I mean, if you keep going with your house analogy, right? On any random street on any given day and anywhere in the world, there's probably fairly few times someone is attempting to break through the window. Whereas the house on the internet, it is how many times a second that window's trying to be breached, right? So it's hard to make that as an apples to apples comparison because of the difference in how much attack traffic is actually occurring for a physical home versus an internet facing device. And like you said, maybe we are just there where it's like we got to build up so many walls and shut off so many things and sacrifice on the altar of security the god of convenience so that we can have a secure environment. Now that's inside. I'm not saying you do whatever the heck you want inside your own home, right? If you own the device, open it straight up, get buck wild. Probably not the smartest idea in the world, but that's your person. You go do your thing. Inside of a corporation, though, you're trying to keep that data safe. You're responsible for other people's information and sensitive information. It might be just the way to go.
And I know what some people are probably thinking, which is like, it's a little draconian to cut down. What if I want to check my personal email or whatever?
You pull out your phone.
Yeah, in the past, that used to be a problem, but today, everybody's got a phone. You've got a personal device. They probably have a guest Wi-Fi you could join up.
Get crazy.
It doesn't seem as unreasonable as it used to.
Yeah.
So Daniel, let me get your opinion. Let's say that you are the CISO for a company with 10,000 employees, massive attack surface in terms of social engineering. Would you entertain the idea of restricting internet access?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I mean, I've worked for a company that restricted internet access. I know what that's like to be an end user on the other side of that. And for the most part, whenever you did run into like, I need some internet here, like I really need to have that, you just a little bit of a ticket. Someone goes, what do you need? This is what I need. This is why I need it. Awesome. Give me a second here. We're going to mull this over and see whether or not it's a worthy endeavor to give you access to that. If so, we'll give it to you. If not, try something else. And that's just kind of how it went. And that wasn't often that occurred. It happened every now and then, but we had very restricted internet access on what I could and could not get access to because they were trying to be more secure. And we were pretty tight because of it.
I think I know the environment you're talking about. That was WebSense.
WebSense.
That was used there. And WebSense was pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off on a tangent here, Sophie, sorry.
I'll allow it.
I'm hoping the nostalgia can, because Don knows what exactly.
A few months ago, somebody asked me about web filtering, and I was like, well, I've got a lot of experience with WebSense, but I haven't used it in years.
Right.
And I could not find
Is it out of business?
I don't think they went
Or
out of
they
business.
just,
I think they got acquired,
now
and
they're another company.
but I couldn't figure it out. Like it's almost like they disappeared. So if you're a listener out there in TV land and you know what the heck happened to WebSense,
Yeah.
shoot me an email. Let me know. Go to the Technado website and you can shoot us a message.
They got acquired by Fortinet.
So I'm guessing if I had to guess that they got acquired by Symantec,
Oh, okay.
because Symantec buys every security product and then lets it die. Right? I mean, that's their business model. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I feel like I could be their CEO. Because how hard is it? You buy whatever security product you can and then just literally do absolutely nothing with it and let it die.
And then you're the only game in town.
Yeah. But all your stuff is, crap.
Don't matter if you're the only thing in town, Don.
Yeah.
You said it's called WebSense?
WebSense.
Are you actually curious what happened to it?
Yeah, do you know?
You know?
So I Googled it.
I like how Don did
did
not
the
think to
Google.
Google it,
Oh,
apparently.
I did. I mean, I didn't put a ton of effort into it, but I did some.
So I just Googled what happened to WebSense, and
He
it does.
passed out drunk before
It
he got to
I was
the...
gonna say, it's a massive conspiracy.
That's as far as he got, was he typed it in.
They covered everything up. It says in 2015 they acquired a network security vendor called StoneSoft from Intel, and then in 2016 the company was renamed to ForcePoint, and then Francisco Partners acquired them in 2021.
ForcePoint. All right.
Supposedly, I'm
Allegedly.
reading from the Google. So
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you are a ForcePoint customer,
Yeah. Tell us your
you
experience.
may be entitled.
now we're talking about the web. Going beyond that, though, if you think
Right.
about all the other protocols that are in use and all the exfiltration that happens with ransomware and so on, if you blocked everything else, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no, that's always been one of the major security, things that you do is check to see what ports and services are available on your devices, turn off and or block anything that you don't need, that you're not using. It's just, that's how it goes. And we kind of got lazy and said, not that it's super hard to make this happen, but as to Don's point, we never really, in times past, haven't really focused on egress filtering.
Yeah.
It's all been on what's coming in. But guess what? Since malware's a thing, you got to worry about stuff going out.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember having a conversation well before I was ever a cybersecurity quote unquote expert. I know. I like to hedge my bets. And someone was like, here's the thing, man. If you got the right firewall and just block everything except the ports that you absolutely need, you're safe. I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
Right? Because, why are you opening a port? Well, because I have a service on the other end of it. Is the service 100% secure? Because if it's not, you still are possibly going to get attacked.
Yeah. And port numbers aren't enforced. You
No.
can netcat just about anything over any port, right?
Go buck wild.
So you'd have to be really specific about source and destination IPs and all that mess. It's hard to do.
Yeah, probably an allowed list versus a deny list
Yeah.
would be the way to go.
It's tricky work, and it can
It
be a
is.
lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
But who knows?
I love when it's like, hey, we can't get to such and such. And we're like, it's time to read the firewall rules. Where did we go wrong?
Yeah.
You did mention one of the things being, what if I can't access my email or whatever, and it not being as much of a problem now because people have phones. But if you're a Gmail user, Google does allow access to Google-owned websites. So even if they
Makes
cut
sense.
off access to the internet, you can still access Google Drive. So just use Gmail, and then you'll be fine.
Well, now, does that mean, so let's say I'm a ransomware author, and I hear about this program. Google's going to cut off internet access, except for access to their own applications, right?
Yeah.
So doesn't that just mean I need to find a way to exfiltrate data using Google's own apps?
Yeah, you shift your focus
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah.
What is it, Google Messenger or something? They have a messenger app, and they've got Gmail, and so I'm sure there's a way to do it.
Well, you could grab the data you want to exfiltrate, archive it, dump it into Google Drive, and then kick off an email to an external email address through Gmail with a link to the shared Google document and download it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All of a sudden, this falls apart. It's a giant waste of time.
Yeah. We need full fencing off, no infill or extra exfiltration.
You just live inside
At
of
all.
Google.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to leave.
It's a walled garden. That's right.
We need a great firewall built around it. This is a new idea. I'm inventing this right now.
Yeah, that's right. In real time.
Yeah, and if only somebody could make.
Oh,
that.
dear leader Don, tell us more.
So- Before we move on, we talked about Googlers and Nooglers and all that, and you made the joke about Microsofties. That's a real thing. It says, yeah, Microsoft employees
it takes like 4
call
seconds
themselves.
to come up with a better name.
They call themselves Microsofties or sometimes just softies.
All right.
Yeah,
So
it's a real thing.
We need this for the podcast. I think we should be called Technaders.
The Techneaters. The Techneaters.
Facebook people are called Facebookers. Real creative.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Amazonians. That makes sense.
Amazonians, I mean, that's the coolest one so far.
This one's an older entry. It says at Twitter we call ourselves tweeps.
Gonna go with no.
Yeah, it's gonna be a no from me.
Yeah, I'll be like, you call me Tweep again, I'm gonna kick your ass.
It does sound like a weird.
We are going
playground
to fight.
insult. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like somebody misspelled twerp.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, I just figured I would let you know you correctly predicted it and you didn't even know it. So
The scene from Office Space. You ever have a case of that? Somebody ever tell you have a case of the Mondays? No. Shit, no. Man, I believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw us off track again. I just wanted to make sure we got that in.
At Technado,
We get where the
hard hitting.
There's a reason it's called Technado. We just spin off the ground and go somewhere entirely different.
Whirling dervishes out here.
So moving on, we'll go into our next segment. This is my personal favorite. It's called
Do.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, so,
Do.
I love seeing Daniel's reaction over there. He gives me like a little eyebrow
I'm always
raise.
like, I need to get like a little whiteboard. And give you like,
Give me a rating out of
9.3 on that one. Yeah.
So this article comes to us from the Hacker News. It says new OpenSSH vulnerability exposes Linux systems to remote command injection. And from what I read about this, it looks like this is a flaw that could potentially be exploited to run specific commands under specific conditions. And there's a patch, but not everybody's implemented that patch, so there's still a lot of devices that are falling victim to
Welcome
this.
to security.
Yeah.
There's a patch, but not everybody's doing it.
Yeah, now this one, as of the filming of this episode, this one is breaking news. Anytime you hear about a vulnerability in OpenSSH, that's a big deal, right? Because the same people that develop OpenSSH are involved in OpenSSL. It's used all over the place, and like with SSH, it's almost always tied to administration of devices. So really, really bad news if there's a vulnerability there. This one has not been fully analyzed yet. It does not have a threat score attached to it. And from my amateur level of cybersecurity knowledge, reading through and looking at this one, I think, is going to be a non-issue for us because it requires so many things to fall into place. Like, you have to be running a particular version of OpenSSH, and there have to be some other libraries on the system that they have to be present already, and they have to find a way to forward authentication requests to another location, which is, I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. I feel like this one's going to blow over, but I always question my own interpretation of it. So, Daniel, what did you learn about this one?
Don, I feel like you're spot on with this one. This is going to be, it's very difficult to have the stars and moons align correctly for you to be able to exploit this vulnerability. The attacker already has to have access to the forwarding server. So they've already have to have compromised the system at some point before they're able to now compromise other systems via the SSH forwarding. That's kind of the crux of this issue. So without that, they're kind of SOL when it comes to being able to actually implement this. I assume this will probably come out and probably be like maybe a medium grade CVSS score, but it's highly technical.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of very specific moving parts that must be aligned correctly. There's already a patch. By the time this thing actually becomes proof of concept, live at 5 kind of thing, it's probably a non-issue for the most part. Now, that doesn't mean you can like wipe your brow, walk off into the sunset, feeling like the hero of the story here. Make sure that you're patching your systems, you're doing the upgrades, because why make it easier, right? What would be the purpose in that? Because you never know. There will be those times when there is an attacker who has already made themselves ingressed into the right server where they will have control over the right things, which will allow them to utilize this attack. So we don't want to make that available for them. Just go ahead. There is a patch available. Stop dragging your heels. I know there can be some testing that needs to be done, and there still needs to be some testing done. And you got some time, so that's good. But have a schedule ready for having that upgrade implemented.
So two thoughts I want to add to it, and the reason I wanted to mention it today was One, this does not seem like the type of attack that somebody would use to gain access to your network. But once they're in, this is the land and expand, right? So they gain a foothold and they grow it. This is a tool that they would use. So while this CVE by itself might be low risk, when it's combined, what is it called?
Attack chain.
Attack chain.
Yeah.
When you build an attack chain, this may be a piece of it that might be far more significant. So that's important.
Yeah.
The other thing is this exploit was possible because of an incomplete fix to a previous exploit, which was CVE 2016-10009. That means this particular exploit has been floating around and viable for almost 7 years. 6 years, definitely, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, has it been being exploited? And now we're just learning about it because researchers have discovered it and because those attackers out there were tight-lipped and just didn't say anything about it. And we're not seeing it actively, being exploited in any real sense of the term. Who knows?
That's a possibility, right? And that's where it shows how valuable it is to not just to look at it and say, this is a medium risk, I'm going to throw it away, right? But to look at what are the indicators of compromise and see if you can find those on your own system, which is what a cybersecurity analyst should be doing most days, right?
That's the job, right? It's what you got in the game for, right? So that you can find it is kind of cool, let's be honest, right? The fact that if you read this research on, we were randomly looking through the source code of SSH agents, and lo and behold, we saw this weird little thing and we thought, you know what? I bet that I'll have access. If they're looking for library files, what if I'm able to supply my own? And what if, and I could, and yep. So it is like super smart people that were able to discover and find these, and that they had the time to look through source code for vulnerabilities and then responsibly disclose them. Kudos to those researchers out there. High level. These are the upper echelons. This is what we all aspire to be one day, right? Is to have that level of skill so that we can lend this type of help to the security space. So really cool stuff in my estimation.
Yeah, and it does highlight a challenge that I hear about a lot, where people watch movies like Hackers and Scanners and Swordfish, right?
Careful now, Don. Don't you stand on my dreams and my childhood.
I thought my life was going to be hacking and moving 3D blocks around to gain access to a server and whatever. And in reality, you're spending your day checking the version number of library files.
Yeah.
But that's the life.
And failing a lot. That's the fun part about it, right? Is where you go, I think, and you try, and that didn't work, but it did not work, but I still feel like I'm on the right, and you're pulling at the thread. You ever watch The Ghost in the Darkness with Val Kilmer?
Mm-mm.
So there's these lines. This is a true story. It really is in Savo, Africa. They're building a bridge. This is in the turn of the century of the 20th century, that is. And these lions are killing people, and they're eating them. And apparently once lions get a taste for people, they have a taste for nothing else.
Yeah.
And they're terrorizing this camp. And so he builds this trap, right, to catch the lions. And it almost worked, but it didn't. And everybody's making fun of it. And he goes, how did he put it? What was it? He said that he believes that the theory is sound, that the plan is sound. Yes, it didn't work, but I'm going to try it again. That is the job of a security expert, is believing that what you are thinking is right, because in your head, it's telling you there's something here. You just have to now get smart enough and knowledgeable enough to figure out how to make that work. That is a lot of cybersecurity.
So in summary, if you can be as used to failure as Daniel is, then you'll do fine in cybersecurity.
Yeah. If you're willing to get punched in the face a lot, metaphorically that is, by your devices.
And coworkers.
It is,
It's true, I've seen
we've got that meeting with HR. We don't want to give away the ghost here. Come on, Don.
We've placed our bets already. It's too late.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that little bit of lore and into that movie, because
I'm convinced the theory is sound. That's what he said. I'm convinced the theory is sound.
Okay. I tried looking for it. I had no luck, so I was going to just give up. So I'm glad you remembered.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and move on to our next article. This one's part of a segment called Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
I didn't know this was about your dad.
All right, look. I'm sorry,
We're
Dad.
giving Papa Goodwin a hard time today because why not?
It just means they like you, I promise.
We wouldn't talk to you if we didn't like you.
This article, my dad doesn't talk to anybody. What are you talking about?
Right? Because he don't like nobody. That's my kind of guy.
He's a smart guy.
That's right.
So this comes to us from Ars Technica.
Unless it's from his banker.
It says, man, I'm gonna get so much trouble next time I go home. Thanks so much for that.
She is chucking you under
It's
the
like
bus.
it's like having my brothers here. It's awesome. I love it. So I'm forgive me if I mispronounce this. This comes from Ars Technica. Zyxel or Zyxel if you're French.
Isn't that
Zyxel
like a
users.
Superman.
Yeah, it's what he's allergic
Mr.
to.
Zyxel.
You have to say the name backwards.
Yeah, you have to
make
say
it
his
go away.
name backwards. It's like an imp
Oh
from
my
the
God,
fourth
yeah,
edition.
I think yeah, something like that. So Zyxel users is my point. Zyxel users still getting hacked by DDoS botnets emerge as public nuisance number 1. So this is a vulnerability that there's a patch for it once again, but it's just that organizations have yet to implement it, and
Yes.
so it's causing problems.
You know, it's interesting, and for years, I have tried to be somewhat neutral on a lot of things, and I try not to call out company names specifically, but I've gotten a little looser with that recently because there's a few just names that you keep seeing pop up
Fortinet.
week after week, month after month. Yeah, Fortinet definitely is one.
Oh yeah, that's right. Fortinet. I heard about that.
Yeah, Fortinet, Microtik.
Yeah.
Or we used to call it Microtic because we didn't know any better. But
I was Microtik.
but it is actually Microtik
Yeah.
is how you say it.
Wrong.
I had to look that up. Zyxel.
I don't care that
is
they
another
made
one.
it up. They're wrong. The pronunciation is Microtik.
These guys, they make routers, switches, firewalls, right? So they make devices that are used in network infrastructure, and they're cheap. That's their real claim to fame, right? So they try and create successful, effective security devices on a low budget. Microtik in particular is very popular in Europe and the Middle East. Zyxel is definitely in Europe, but also here in the U.S. to an extent, but not as big. Fortinet is big here in the U.S. But all three vendors have something in common, which is a constant stream of exploits and vulnerabilities that are frustrating. And sometimes they are good about getting a patch or fix released pretty quickly, but they don't exactly put a lot of effort into getting their customers to update, either by making it difficult or just not by notifying customers. If the customers are already buying the cheapest stuff, then they're probably not very concerned about security. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bottom dollaring it. Well, never mind.
Yeah.
So the main lesson here, I don't think for our listeners is like, hey, stay away from Zyxel, although you probably should. This is really, it's a failing by a number of people, but we can blame the end users for a while, but we're at the point now where I think we really need to blame these companies. Like, how many times do we have to hear about Zyxel before we say, don't buy their stuff? How many times do we have to hear about Fortinet with hard-coded admin credentials in the background they don't want to tell anybody about before we say, don't buy their stuff? And I think we're at that point where we need to stop buying their stuff.
You ready for a fun fact?
What's that?
It was Fortinet that discovered the vulnerability.
Oh, in the Zyxel stuff?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. I wonder if they're partnered
Super
up somehow.
fun, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Super fun.
It's a small world, isn't it?
A lot of these companies have like threat research groups or whatever, and that's what they do. They just are analyzing new threats that are out there. Fortinet is one of them, and they just happen to be, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just quote unquote so happen to be. Makes you go,
Yeah. Well, a lot of these companies do share hardware, manufacturing plants, developers. So sometimes they might be separate companies, but actually have some of the same development team. You never quite know. But, it just shows, though, that when you're trying to secure a network, when you're concerned about that and you're buying appliances, you've really got to take a look at the vendor and their track record. And
by the way, I got to back that up. They discovered the Fortinet discovered the propagation of several DDoS botnets exploiting the Zyxel vulnerability.
okay.
That's what they found, and they did a big write-up on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a case of a patch was released 12 weeks ago, 4 months ago. No, 3 months ago.
Where's the
I
fire,
could do
Don?
math, yeah. And people haven't done updates.
Now, so we've worked in enterprise space. I'm sure there are people that are listening going, but Daniel, there's good reasons. There are some good reasons not to immediately patch things. Give me one. Give me one. Let's play devil's advocate here.
Just look at Apple last week where they did the rapid response rollout and it broke some websites and they had to roll it back.
And it broke a bunch of stuff. What would you say, in your experience, that is, of course, this is obviously kind of a subjective thing. In your experience, what has been a good schedule for rolling out new critical vulnerability, whatever, updates?
So if it's critical, 48 to 72 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it needs to be quick, but you don't want to be day one for those times when there's rollbacks. Let somebody else be the guinea pig.
Nice. And I think that would be reasonable. I think that seems reasonable. We got to do a little bit of testing, make sure not everything breaks when we roll this thing out, and bite your nails and hope for the best. Fingers crossed, everyone, because sometimes that does happen. Things go break. But I mean, come on, how long has this damn thing been out?
12 weeks.
I mean, come on, people. Come on.
So, they're going to update it in the coming months.
Yeah.
Just give them time.
That's the standard marketing ploy, right? Yeah. In the coming months.
Yeah, a million years ago, I worked for a bank, and the way we did our rollouts was we actually had at the headquarters office, we had an entire bank branch effectively built out in our tech room so that we could immediately start testing patches.
That's cool.
And then we had 4 branches that were designated as our test branches, and they were all ones we could drive to in under 15 minutes. And so we could deploy to those branches. We had extra hardware at the branches. So like if we botched the firewall, you just swap the firewall out.
Nice.
Not even roll back the software. Just swap the hardware out, done. So we're minimizing that downtime. And then once it passed through that, we were ready for the wider rollout. So you need to have a testing plan in place. But if you're a small business, if you're a dentist office with like 8 employees,
it's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think you also need to realize and recognize that no security program you put in place is going to be effective. You're too small.
Well, and like, why are these devices not auto-updating?
That's the thing.
Right? Again, if these are small home, small business kind of devices, they don't know.
Yep.
You slap out that update, everything still works. They're not doing a bunch of firewalling and things of that nature with it. Just give them the update.
So Microsoft used to do that, where updates were not turned on automatically.
Yeah.
And if you wanted it, you needed a WSUS server or whatever. You needed to put infrastructure out there and turn it on yourself. But the times have changed. And so today, when you install Windows, automatic updates are turned on by default, right? That mentality is not spread to all of these other companies. And they view it as a risk. Like, what if they're automatically updating your wireless router at home and it bricks it?
Yeah.
Now they got to replace it, right?
I would say, they have to roll that cost in, because if they brick your stuff, obviously they need to replace it. So be good at your updates. But I don't want to conflate the idea between, like, I kind of made that point already, as far as like, if Zyxel is a home or small business, you don't have people on like life support with a Zyxel device in front of it.
Not.
Yeah, that would be wrong. I believe that you would be criminally negligent if you did it at this point. So we're not talking about enterprise level things. And on those things, you have an IT team, and their job is to schedule and purposefully do things in an organized manner so that it does not bork your entire network or critical systems.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe in that space, we still leave that up to the IT team, and then that's why you would be criminally negligent if you did not do that without good cause. So if it's been 4 weeks and you are in an enterprise land, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, when you look at these companies, they look at it as, all right, there's a risk. If we remote update and it bricks a device, we have to deal with it.
Right.
Or if we don't do the update, the customer gets hacked and the customer has to deal with it.
Right.
So easy call.
Yeah.
Put it on the customer.
Well, right. And then if that's the case, it's on you, customer. Don't buy their crap.
Yep. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I like looking through the comments sometimes just because it's interesting to see what people have to say. And I didn't realize they have like an upvote downvote system on Ars Technica, like on Reddit or whatever, and it'll let you see. So this one got quite a few downvotes, but they said this is going to be a really unpopular opinion, but I think that all connected devices should have auto update enabled by default and impossible to disable, and it should be required that the last update for any product should be to permanently kick it offline or brick it, because otherwise users will keep products on that don't have support anymore and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just take away the option from them altogether. The user doesn't have to worry about it. Just brick it as soon as the device is no longer getting support, basically. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's when you
brick it. Yeah.
That's when you give up the idea of ownership altogether.
Right, exactly.
Like, I no longer own any device that
I'm
I
not
have.
down with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the people here clearly agreed, because it had several downvotes. But I just thought it was interesting you were talking about like auto updates and everything, and why are these not enabled by default? And this person's in agreement on that front. Just maybe they took it a little bit.
Yeah,
they kept
extreme. Marching off the cliff with it.
Yeah. And while we're at it, anybody that doesn't update their devices, just kill them.
Yeah. That's what we'll do is we'll build these camps, right? And we'll stick them in it. And it's like, whoa, bro.
Gotta draw the line somewhere.
We're very committed to the bit. Well, all right. I think I'm going to stop scrolling through the comments now because otherwise I'll go down. There's a lot.
You know the internet rule, right? Never read the comment section.
It's just so fun, Daniel.
It can be.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and click out of that because otherwise I'll be here all day.
What's this? Forge what?
No, absolutely not. Like I said, we're gonna go ahead and stop it there. I did want to mention once again though that Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. So keep in mind you can use that discount code Technado30 for a discount on an IT Pro membership. I also wanted to mention ACI Learning has some cool webinars and live on social events you're able to watch. We had one last week that had to do with ChatGPT, which is a hot topic right now. And if you missed it, you can still go back and watch it on the YouTube channel. And ACI Learning will be, I believe the phrasing they used was revving up the tech world, literally and figuratively, at Black Hat in a couple of weeks here. It's going to be August 5th to the 10th. They're going to have a Mario Kart tournament running at their booth. That's booth 1589, I believe. And I'm going to be there as well. So it's going to be super fun. And just, come hang out. It's going to be really fun. There's going to be prizes and we're going to have a good time. But I think that's going to do it for me, unless there's anything I'm forgetting.
Nope, I think that's a wrap for this week.
Radio silence from the peanut gallery. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me for this discussion. Not that you had a choice. And thank you for watching this episode of Technado. We'll see you next time.
Help me.